UFC Kansas City betting show. We have 14 fights lined up for this Saturday. I'm Jon Kelly. Let's hear the picks. We're going to kick things off in the women's bantamweight division as Joselyn Edwards comes in as a minus 290 favorite. The comeback on Chelsea Chandler is plus 230. And this is one where we have Joselyn Edwards coming off that third round submission victory against Tamaris Vidal. I was on the submission angle there at 12-1 in that fight. So she came through finally for me in that spot. I felt like I had been chasing the submission angle with her over her last couple fights. So it was good to see it finally, get paid off in that situation. And I think she is going to have the wrestling and grappling advantage in this matchup as well, because she's somebody that has relied on her ground game. She can rack up multiple takedowns. And we've seen Chelsea Chandler really struggle when taken down. Her ability to work back to her feet is really just not there at all. She got dominated by Norma Dumont. Of course, that was a couple years ago now, and that was up at featherweight. But I just don't trust the defensive wrestling or grappling of Chelsea Chandler. I don't even trust the striking, to be honest. Edwards, I do have some concerns just because we have seen her gas out in the third round multiple times. So that is concerning. But in terms of who's going to be winning the fight up to that point, I feel very confident that she's going to be up 2 rounds going into the third, because not only does she have the wrestling and the grappling on the feet as well, like it's not doing a ton of damage, but she's very active with the kicks. It's a lot of empty volume, and that's just going to score against somebody that's very sloppy on the feet. Might have a little bit more power on the Chandler side, but I just don't trust her to use it. She got hurt by Yana Santos in her last fight. I really don't trust her. I think Edwards is the better fighter, better camp, better skill set. Outside of the cardio, I feel like she's mostly bulletproof here. We're going to say it's Edwards by decision. That's the official pick. Next fight up, we have Timmy Kawamba taking on Roberto Romero. And I do slightly favor the Kawamba side, maybe even more than slightly. I just feel like he's a better fighter than Romero, and maybe that ends up aging poorly. But I feel like, he's got a couple things going for him in this matchup. For starters, he has a lot more UFC experience with multiple UFC fights under his belt, whereas Romero basically just came in on short notice to fight David Onama. And while he did, show some power in that matchup, I don't think he has much else to his game. And you look at the course of his career, he fought over in Kambache Global and really lost to some not so very good fighters. His resume isn't very impressive. I'm just not sure he's ready for UFC level, and I don't think super highly of Kawamba either, but he is durable. He does have a well-rounded skill set. He trains at a good camp. I just feel like he has some attributes here where in a fight that I expect to go the distance at a large clip, I trust him more to be able to win those rounds. So I'm gonna side with Kawamba here. Kawamba by decision. That's the official pick. And up next, we have the biggest betting favorite on the card. Jacqueline Amari is a minus 800 favorite. The comeback on Pauline Viana is plus 500. And Amari is now putting together a nice little win streak here with back-to-back first-round submission victories. And that is what she brings to the table. She comes from a high-level grappling background, holds a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And we've seen when she's able to get these fighters down, she's very dangerous on the mat, looking for arm bars, hunting for submissions, and she is going to be the better grappler here. Pauline Viana, also a black belt, but she struggles to defend takedowns, very poor in terms of her wrestling defense, and once she's taken down, she's somebody that would much rather try to throw up subs from her back as opposed to working back to her feet, which is probably what she needs to do in this fight. So I just don't really have much faith in her to be competitive here, because she's not going to be able to sub a better grappler, from bottom, in my opinion. And she has been somebody that has been submitted herself. And I just feel like Amari is just levels above her on the mat. And that's going to play out here in this fight. So we're going to say it's Amari by submission. That's the official pick. And next fight up, we have Malcolm Wellmaker making his UFC debut. He's a slight favorite at minus 120. The comeback on Cameron Simon is plus 100. And this is another one where I feel like the UFC experience of Simon is going to be able, to play to his advantage here. This is a guy that's fought many times in the UFC already in his young career. He's fought a very high level of competition his last 2 fights against Christian Rodriguez and Peyton Talbot. And yes, he's on a 2-fight losing streak now, so he needs a win. He's motivated. He's getting a step down what I think is a step down in terms of competition against Malcolm Wellmaker, who, yes, is an undefeated prospect fighting off the Contender Series last season. But I feel like this is a lot of respect in the market to make him a small favorite here with Cameron Simon, who's more experienced, who's a good striker, who carries his power for 3 rounds. And I just have a lot of question marks on the Wellmaker side, because while he does seem like a great athlete, sure, he's got some power. We saw that on the Contender Series with the highlight reel knockout, but his level of competition is very low. And I just want to see him tested at a higher level. And I think Cameron Simon's going to be able to do that for us. And I feel like, that's going to be to the benefit of Simon here if this fight goes later in these rounds. And I'm going to side with Cameron Simon as the slight underdog here. We'll say it's Simon by decision. That's the official pick. Next up, we have Deman Blackshear, a minus 470 favorite. The comeback on Haley Alatang is plus 320. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this one because I feel like Deman Blackshear just has this guy covered pretty much wherever the fight goes. Deman Blackshear, solid kickboxer, but what he's best at is getting the fight to the ground, his high-level submission grappling, coming off that submission win over Cody Gibson his last time out with that Kimura in round 2. He's very high level on the mat, and Hailey Alatang is somebody that has kind of gone to his wrestling at times because on the feet, he can be hurt. He does have a little bit of power, but he's low volume, and so he's had to mix in some wrestling at times because he's outgunned on the feet. That's not going to be a path for him here. He's going to have to defend the takedowns, avoid the mat at all costs, and I don't trust him to be able to do that. And once it hits the ground, I think Blackshear is just way better at him in terms of the grappling, and he ends up submitting him as well. So we're going to say it's Blackshear by submission. That's the official pick. And next fight up, we have Chris Gutierrez, a minus 140 favorite. The comeback on John Castaneda is plus 120. And this fight was actually booked back at UFC 313. Castaneda pulled out due to an illness. But in terms of the matchup, I am going to slightly lean with Gutierrez. This is one that I think the first time around, I went with Castaneda, but I was kind of going back and forth, and I actually looked into it a little bit more. And I feel better about the Gutierrez side just because I've seen some things from Castaneda where I think he could struggle to get around the legs of Gutierrez. Gutierrez is a very high-level kickboxer. We know, he's very one-dimensional with the kicking approach, but that's very difficult to deal with. And if you can't get around the legs or mix in some takedowns and do some of those things, then I think you're going to struggle. And I could see Castaneda maybe being able to land a takedown or two, but not doing much with it. And on the feet, I just feel like Gutierrez is going to be getting ahead in terms of the volume. I think the fight against Marcos showed a lot there where Gutierrez can kind of execute a similar game plan, but with more kicks and make it hard for Castaneda to close distance. So it's one that I do think hits the judges' scorecards at a very high clip. I think I can't even envision what a finish would look like in this fight. So I do think overs is probably the safest look. It is very chalky, but I just don't see this fight finishing. In terms of who's going to win, I am going to side with Gutierrez. I think he wins a competitive decision. Next fight up, we have Evan Elder taking on Gage Young. He's a minus 218 favorite. The comeback on Gage Young is plus 180. And Elder was originally supposed to fight someone else, I forget, and then it was Hassan Zada who pulled out as well. So now we're getting Gage Young. He fought on the Contender Series against Quillen Salkild and got dominated in terms of the wrestling and the grappling. Ended up losing a decision there. I don't think he's very high level. He seems to be, a scrapper in there. He's got some heart, can mix in takedown at times. He seems tough, has some power, but I just don't think his skill set is very good. But I also am not shocked that Evan Elder isn't like a huge favorite here. I think that speaks to Evan Elder's fighting style. He's somebody that, kind of makes it harder than it has to be at times. He's very hittable on the feet. He can get hurt as well. He kind of fights down to the level of competition that he's facing. So he's just a very mid fighter. And that should be enough here to get the job done. It's just, I don't feel comfortable, adding him to parlays or whatever at this price. But I do think he wins here. Just kind of gives the young kid, Gage Young, a vet lesson. So we're going to say it's Elder by decision. That's the official pick. And next fight up, we have the fight that I'm looking the most forward to. It's Matt Schnell, a minus 265 favorite. The comeback on Jimmy the Brick Flick is plus 215. And you guys know I'm just a huge Jimmy Flick fan. I love this kid. I think he's a very exciting fighter, whether that's good or bad in terms of his performance, because at times, he has kind of laid an egg. But I think the upside is what gets me excited. The dude's a very exciting grappler. The durability is no good. The striking isn't great either. And that's been his demise. 15 of his 17 wins have come by submission, but he's been knocked out 6 times in his career. But now he's facing someone in Matt Schnell. And why I would be lying if I said I wasn't tempted on the Flick side is because Matt Schnell is kind of similar in the sense that, his skill set pretty solid. I would say he's the better striker on the feet for sure, but he doesn't carry a ton of power. He only has 2 career knockouts, only 1 knockdown in a ton of UFC fights. He has a nice jab, just not a ton of power. And then he's somebody that wants to go to his grappling. That is a little slick on the mat, but can't defend takedowns. I think Jimmy Flick is a better wrestler, and I think he's a better submission grappler as well. So that's why I think Flick is live in this fight. I think it's going to be up to Schnell to keep the fight on the feet, use that jab, maybe even potentially try to hurt Flick. But again, I just don't know if he has that type of power in his bag. And I worry that he's going to get taken down here. And I don't know. I could see the grappling kind of going either way. And Flick is never somebody that you feel confident, trusting in terms of the game plan and the performance. But I feel like he's a live dog here. So I'm rolling with my guy, Jimmy Flick, to get it done. We'll say it's Flick by submission. That's the official pick. And next fight up, we have Ikram Alistarov, a -600 favorite. The comeback on Andre Muniz is +440. And this is a very easy fight to break down because the stylistic difference between the two, like Andre Muniz is very one-dimensional, has to get the takedowns, high-level submission grappler. But again, he's another one of these guys on this card that has serious durability and cardio issues. And I think that's going to plague him here against Alistarov, who not only is capable of going to the ground at times, but has big power on the feet, multiple knockouts at the UFC level. I think he keeps the fight on the feet and wins by knockout early. We're going to say it's Alistarov by TKO. That's the official pick. Next fight up, we have Randy Brown, a -238 favorite. The comeback on Nicholas Dalby is +200. And I'm not a huge fan of either of these guys. I typically look to bet against them. Randy Brown is somebody that is one of those decision type of fighters for the most part. Like his skill set's solid, very long, very rangy. He's a good striker, but typically more of a volume decision type of fighter. And then Nicholas Dalby, for starters, turns 41 years old later this year. And I usually don't look to back these aging fighters, but he has looked pretty solid over his last couple fights. He's somebody that is just very well-rounded, solid striker on the feet, durable as well, can mix in some cage push and wrestling at times. And I think he's going to need to do that and make this fight dirty. I think he's live for like weaseling out a split decision, but I just feel like that's his upside in this fight, whereas Randy Brown should be able to stay on the outside and pick him apart on his way to a decision. So I'm going to say it's Randy Brown beating him to a decision. I just don't like the price here. Next fight up, we have Michel Pereira, a -135 favorite. The comeback on Abus Magomedov is +114. And I kind of see this one just playing out like a car crash. Both of these guys got big power, early finishing ability. Pereira also has the submission upside as well. You just can't trust this guy in terms of the game plan, even though at times he's kind of surprised you and done the right thing, done the more obvious thing. But he's still somebody that I don't think you can fully trust. But I do think he just has more ways to win in this fight. Even though Magomedov has improved his grappling, we've seen him go to the takedowns at times. I don't think that's a path for him here against Michel Pereira. And I think both guys are capable of hurting each other on the feet. Pereira just has the submission upside if they do end up grappling. So I'm going to slightly favor Pereira here. Either way, I think this one ends inside the distance. We'll say it's Pereira by TKO. That's the official pick. Next fight up, we have David Onama, a -180 favorite. The comeback on Giga Chikadze is +150. And I kind of like the underdog here in Chikadze. And I've been a fan of David Onama. The guy's a freak athlete, very explosive, very powerful, certainly has finishing ability. But I also think he still, has some areas to improve, in terms of his striking defense. He's very hittable on the feet. You've seen that at times with the Mason Jones fight back in his debut, with the fight against Roberto Romero his last time out, where he got dropped in that fight, the Nate Landwehr fight. Like, he just always, like, shows upside, but then it's like all of his fights basically turn into these crazy back and forth wars. And I think that's just because he needs to shore up some of his defensive issues. And on the flip side, Giga Chikadze, yes, he hasn't looked, career best lately, but he started to face really tough fighters. Calvin Kattar over the course of 5 rounds. He also fought Arnold Allen his last time out, who's a very, very high-level fighter. So I just feel like it's a little bit of disrespect going from those guys to an up-and-coming athlete who's good, but still somewhat green, where Chikadze is a high-level kickboxer. He should be able to kind of pick apart Onama when the fight's at space. So it's going to be one where I could see this being back and forth as well, but I'm going to side on the Chikadze side just because of that kicking ability and how sharp he is with his kickboxing. I feel like he's going to be able to kind of pick apart Onama if we don't see those defensive issues kind of shored up in this fight. So we'll say it's Chikadze by decision. That's the official pick. Which brings us to our co-main event, as Xiangmin Yang is a minus 520 favorite. The comeback on Anthony Smith is plus 390. And I love this Xiangmin Yang dude. He is a very exciting fighter to watch. Has massive power. He's huge. He's just knocking everybody out. 3-0 in the UFC, all by first round knockout. And sure, that doesn't answer, some of the other questions we have about his game. But in certain matchups, it's just not going to matter. And I think this is one of those against Anthony Smith, who is really just a shell of the former fighter that he used to be. He's still a big name, a veteran in the sport. But in terms of his ability to win rounds, it's just not really there. And I just don't trust his durability. He's been knocked out a bunch, low volume on the feet, can be taken down, can be hit. So unless he somehow forces a grappling exchange and takes advantage of Min Yang on the mat, I don't see a path to victory for him here. I think he gets beat up on the feet and stopped. So I'm going to say it's Xiangmin Yang. The knockout trend continues here. That's going to be the official pick. Which brings us to our main event, as Ian Machado Gary is a minus 125 favorite. The comeback on Carlos Prates is plus 105. And this is a really fun matchup between two up-and-coming prospects in the division, very well-known guys in the welterweight division here. And Ian Gary is somebody that has been kind of relying on his grappling more so in his last few fights. He's looking to mix in takedowns, control his opponents, threaten with submissions. I think that might be the game plan here against Carlos Prates. I think he'd be wise to look to do that because Prates is just so high level on the feet, comes from a kickboxing background, trains at the Fighting Nerds, has clear knockout power. He's nasty with those knees and elbows in the clinch. And I think Gary has shown us that he's very hittable at times on the feet. So I don't trust his defense if this fight plays out at space. I think he needs to go to the grappling, but I'm just not as convinced as the market seems to be that he's going to have much success doing that, because Prates has shown he's got pretty solid takedown defense. He's in the gym training with some really high-level grapplers. Kai Bohayo, we saw how Gene Silva's takedown defense looked against Bryce Mitchell as well. I think he's going to know what to expect here. The only concern is really the cardio. He's talked at times, he's known as, a cigarette smoker. So you can't think the cardio is all that great. He's also talked about at times, he doesn't like to fight 3 rounds because he gets tired. And now this one's scheduled 4 or 5 rounds. So that is a concern here. But I still just kind of think he pieces up Gary early. So at worst, if you're backing the Prates side, I think you'll be able to flip that position live if you see him fading. And you could probably get Gary at a much better price in round 3. So that's kind of what I'm looking at here in terms of this matchup. I am going to side on the Prates side, just not really a big Gary guy. Don't trust the grappling here. We'll see how it plays out, but I'm going to say it's Prates by TKO. That's the official pick. And that's going to do it, guys. I appreciate you watching. If you're not already signed up at Underdog, go do it, man. What are you waiting for? This is the funnest way to get involved in the UFC action. We have significant strikes, takedowns, markets for just about everything that you can think of, and much, much more. The best way to get involved and sweat the action on Saturday. It's over at Underdog, so be sure to check it out. Appreciate you guys watching. Best of luck, and we'll see you next week.